Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Beer Guys Radio. We're here. We're drinking some beer. We're going to have a good time. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Just before we came on, we were talking about the season's actually changing. And even though we're down here in Atlanta in the dirty South, we're starting to feel it too. So our northern neighbors have likely felt a little bit of it before now. But leaves are changing, leaves are falling, temperatures are dropping, it's getting darker, and I hate every bit of it. I'm just totally opposed to the entire thing. But Nate, you said you're a fan, right?
Oh, I'm a big fan. I'm a little biased though. My birthday's in October, so anytime this, and everybody loves it except for you apparently. But this time of year, especially this month, everyone is just on board with team fall, team leaves changing colors, that first crisp in the air. You get that, but you do get the potential for an Indian summer when it gets warm again after you get that first false fall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm here for it.
So see, my birthday is the first day of autumn. So in the South, that usually means the weather's usually pretty nice. So it's even though it's officially autumn there, we're still feeling pretty summery. So, and because it's Atlanta, we may have summer again for Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Absolutely.
So we just never know. But I am Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing well. And you know what? I do kind of enjoy it being a little cooler out just because all of my south-facing windows, they still bring in a ton of heat. So it actually gets warmer here in the fall than it is perhaps during the summer because I have more direct light. But yes, we have a lot to talk about on this show. We've got another Anchor Brewing update. We're watching that real close. We've got some beer hot takes. We've got some more TikTok beer shenanigans. And we got some stuff about airport beers and a whole lot more. And we also have Mo Mike Nate. How you doing, Mo Mike Nate?
I'm doing well. Like I said before, really enjoying the cooler air. But also with the cooler air, really enjoying those dark beers. They just hit different when it's 50 degrees outside.
It just hits different. It just hits different. Yeah, they're enjoyable in the colder weather. We'll have to break out our beer caramelizers. Have to roar up some beers here soon if we got to do it. I don't think I did any fire pitting last year. I just don't think the opportunity presented itself. So that does make it a little bit better.
I've been beer caramelizing throughout the year on a few things. Whenever I've opened up a very oxidized older beer, I'm like, well, what would happen if I applied 1,000 degrees to this beer very shortly? And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I can see where you would think of that being more of the fire pit season type of thing. But no, that's me in the kitchen bored on a Friday night, basically.
That's me in the kitchen. That's me
in the spotlight
with the beer caramelizer. Yes.
Changing the beer religion.
We're just going for it. But Brian, a lot of websites they dig for content. You look things up, and for those that are familiar with Reddit is a pretty good go-to for a lot of places that do lists or things like that. And a lot of people have said when they search for like an answer for something, or they have a question, or even like looking for best restaurant or anything, they'll add the word Reddit to the end of their search because those are the true unbiased. That's the people, the Vox Populi right there, So, but VinePair recently put out an article with Reddit's list of polarizing beer takes. And so I think we've got a few that we've picked from the list here, and I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on this and maybe get your polarizing takes or your hot takes on that. But one of the first ones up, Nate, let me get your thoughts here. Someone on Reddit said, and apparently this was a polarizing opinion, Nitro beers are just flat beers.
Well, that person is just flat wrong because Nitro beers have that really nice creamy head to it, and the carbonation, while it's not big bubbles, it's small bubbles, and I really enjoy the mouthfeel of a Nitro beer.
I agree. And I try to avoid threads like that because anytime I disagree, I really want to get into it. And I know if you ever get into a disagreement online, you've already lost it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Just don't do it. It's already a losing proposition there. But Brian, I know your take, man, but what are your thoughts on Nitro beers?
So I get why they're saying that. I think the people that are thinking of it as being flat want that carbonic acid from the CO2 in there, and it's just not there. And so when they don't get that, they're like, "Oh, this is just flat." But I mean, you gotta you're not appreciating the nuance, the texture of the beer. So I think that there is the issue with the nitrogen leaves the beer a lot faster, so you can end up with a flat pint. But I think the beers are brewed so that the lower levels of nitrogen carbonation are flattering. So I I like them. I think I'm great with it. I actually enjoy nitro beers, and at one point in my life looked for them specifically. If a bar had a nitro tap, I got excited, and I would always say, "Oh, what's on the nitro tap?" So I
Yeah.
still like them. I still like them well enough.
I think if someone who said the person that said this or people that said this, if they had a nitro beer next to a truly flat beer, then they'd see the difference there. I mean, the silkiness, the creaminess there. Yeah, it doesn't have that sparkle and pop to it like like a saison, something with a higher carbonation level, something sparkly there. But they're nice. And to be honest, there are some beers that I think just are better with a nitro or even a lower carbonation. We had, I think, Sweetwater Woodlands. Brian, we visited Sweetwater last weekend and we were talking about the Woodlands. For anybody who hasn't heard of Sweetwater's Woodlands, it was probably 5 years ago or so that they opened the Woodlands. And this was, unfortunately for them, kind of on the tail end of the hype period for like wild and mixed fermentation ales, because that was their intention to do barrel aged beers and that. And they put out a really nice stout, but it was nearly flat. It was very low carbonation, and they got quite a few complaints about it. I thought it was great. I think with that style and that, and Brian, I think you said the same. You enjoyed that, and I think maybe Orpheus had one time that was, I mean, it was thick as chocolate pudding. You could have sliced that beer, but the carbonation was low or barely noticeable, and it was still a phenomenal beer.
I think a really good side by side that anybody, especially in the US, can do, probably really the US in general. Left hand milk stout, both the stout and the nitro. You can buy them just about anywhere. You can try them side by side, and that way you can really taste the difference between just a normal carbonated stout and then a nitro stout, and really understand what we're talking about, where it's the texture, the mouthfeel, but also just decide for yourself. Is it flat?
Is it for you?
Or get 3 of them and pour one and let it go flat.
Mm-hmm.
And
you need to let one go flat.
Yeah.
You need to let one go flat. Otherwise, that's just going to, having the regular one next to it will just enforce the idea like, wow, this might be flat. It's like, no, you need the actual flat beer next to it. I liked it. I think it was called Sinner's Son or something like that. There was a coffee variant on Sweetwater, and it was really thick, and it was a lot of those big stouts have very little carbonation to them, and they don't need it. Some of them still do, but a lot of them are very, very lowly carbonated, and they're great like that. You don't necessarily need much to deliver that flavor. There's so much there to be enjoyed. So I'm on board with it. And I think right before Orpheus closed their tap room, they were selling swing top 32-ounce bottles of a still, like a still stout. I think, was it a still barley or a still stout? It was a barley one, a still barley one. And that was just in part because they had product and that was the only way they could move it. So just have a still barley one. And you know what?
On board, huh?
I'm on board with it. I would still do it. I think it might benefit from a little carbonation, but knowing what I know about the beers that Jason was making, it'll probably still be really good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Next hot take from Reddit, and I thought how hypocritical it is to talk about websites scouring Reddit for content, and then we're talking about the article that scoured the content. But that said, not enough breweries are making 6-packs. I disagree with that, and that's because that's my drinking style personally. I get a lot of singles. There's not a lot of beers that I buy by the 6-pack or case or what have you. So I'm totally fine with them doing singles or 4-packs. If it's a beer I really like, I'll get a 4-pack. But I like to keep a variety around. So that's my main thing there. And we're seeing that the bigger cans are becoming more popular. People want these bigger size than that. another thing that's kind of interesting is I think not just getting more product out than that, but with the price of beers these days, if they started putting these things in 6-packs, I mean, we've already seen some of them, $16, $17 for a 6-pack of 12 ounce. I think it was Sculpin. When Sculpin came to Georgia, it was a very pricey 6-pack. And then we were talking on Reddit. We were talking on the Reddit Atlanta Beer Forum about a drop of some, I think it's Trillium lagers and pilsners and such. And with the prices, these things worked out to being like $120 a case for some pilsners, man. And there was others they were talking about like $125 to $150, $100 for a case of beer. It's madness. It's madness, man. So we've got Stan's got an opinion here, got a thought on the low carb stout. Stan Hudson from Neutral Ground Brewing. Near still stouts can be killer. Adding just a basic amount can cause some of those dark malt harsh notes to rise and become too prominent. I agree, man. I've really enjoyed, getting the couple that I've had that have been on the lower side. It's really nice, and no arguments for me on that. So, Nate, what's your 6-pack take?
I still enjoy a good 12-ounce can, and so I think that enough breweries still make 6-packs. If you really look for it, you can. The 4-pack 16-ounce has definitely taken the beer retail industry by storm. And I don't know on the brewery side if that's just they're making a better margin on it. If there's got to be some sort of cost reason why you're seeing it more and more of a thing. Because for a while, even 5-6 years ago, they almost never existed. And now I can see that, it's a little harder for you to find a 6-pack of 12-ounce cans, but they're still out there. You can absolutely still find some.
They're here and there. Are you a 6-pack buyer, Nate? Do you buy beers in 6-packs?
To be honest with you, predominantly no.
Right.
Maybe in a 12-pack I'll get one 12-ounce can, but usually I'm just going to my local beer store and they've got a bunch of beer singles, and so I like being able to buy a single 16-ounce can. And here on the show on a Wednesday night or on a recording night, it's just easy enough for me to have two and be done with it.
Brian, next hot take coming over to you, because I know you have opinions on saisons. There aren't enough saisons out there. True or false?
I would say true, but I think it needs a caveat. There's not enough good saisons out there, because when somebody brought that up, they were like, well, there are a lot of saisons out there and some of them aren't very good. And so, yeah. And so there's not enough good saisons and there's not enough saison drinkers. That's the other part of the equation that's not there. Like, the people who love saisons don't understand how anybody couldn't love them. And I love them. And I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to be drinking them. And, that's the thing. People are just not into it. So if you can't sell them, I get why. But I agree. I want more saisons. I want there to be more options, especially during any time is good, but all throughout summer and spring, especially. I'm in the mood for those. So,
we were at a beer fest not long ago, and there was a brewer there that had a shirt on, and kind of his mantra was "Saison's not dead." And that brewery, not long after the festival, announced their closure. So, there's people out there passionate about it. And we know that every brewery is struggling right now. But I think if you have especially like saisons, it's just not a good climate for you at this time.
And his saisons were so good too.
Very good.
I picked up a single when I was up in the Carolinas before I realized it was Birds Fly South, I believe. And before I realized that they were closing, and had I known, I would have bought more than that single. I did the, you look around, I'm like, I want to try a lot of things. And so I got 16 ounces. If I'm doing singles, I'm usually going 16 ounces. So,
all right.
Yeah. So I did that.
I just, again, give me some 8-ounce cans, put everything in 8 ounces. I'm totally good with that. Buy me some singles.
Did you see was it an old ale or a barley one? What was it I had? I did find an 8-ounce beer in a store up in North. It was North Carolina. No, South Carolina. Sorry, I was in South Carolina, and I found one a barley wine in a little one. So I had to get it. I'm like, it's JW Lee's, It was expensive, but I didn't care. I'm like, first of all, the size of the can. I love the size. And it's a really good beer, so I got that. I'd love to see 8 ounces for the really big stuff. That would be
stuff
perfect.
like that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good size. Unfortunately, that usually carries a price per ounce premium. So
the PPO
Yeah.
police all over that, man. The next hot take: beer that tastes like candy are ruining the industry. Nate, thoughts?
So when I was a kid and had my first ever sip of alcohol, it was Dad's lager. I don't know what it was, but it's that just classic beer tasting beer lager that when you are a child and have no basis for alcohol, tastes like garbage. You don't like it. You don't appreciate it. I think beer that tastes like candy, I can see this person's opinion and why they think that way, but I think it makes beer way more approachable to people who generally are not beer drinkers.
I don't like your take, Nate, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you're like, well, when you're a kid and you drink your first beer, and maybe beer with candy in it will get the younger drinkers. So I don't support your take on this one.
I understand that.
So
you go into dangerous territory there.
I get what you're saying, but I would like to say, as an individual and as a representative of Beer Guys Radio, we are against your take on this topic. So
I am not advocating children drink the beer.
Okay,
like candy.
Clarify. Disclaimer: Nate does not think you should steal your dad's Fruity Pebbles IPA. So just Nate's talking about, well, it does make the beer more approachable for children. So no, I get it, but no, I don't. I think Nate taking the jokes out of it. I'm not even sure that's. Look, if you like a Fruity Pebble beer, you like something. Our friends at Pontoon, who are having some struggles right now with a bad partnership, and it may impact them. They had really good luck with a beer. I think it was called Smiggles.
Rainbow Smiggles.
Rainbow Smiggles. Yeah. And it's not, thankfully for Nate, it's not the kids that are drinking these. I mean, these are our craft drinkers that like these. My take on this is drink what you like, man. Drink what you like. If it's a stupid beer and you like stupid beer, then drink stupid beer, because the people that don't like stupid beers don't have to drink them. And I don't think it's ruining the industry, because there's still plenty of breweries. We can go to Halfway Crooks. We can go to Good Word Brewing. We can go to any number of places that are still making a ton of just classic beers and other good beers. If you want a Martin House beer, if you want a Pontoon Smiggles beer, drink it. If that's what you dig. If you, what is it, 450 North that basically makes the slushies in a can and stuff. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Brian, how about you? What are your thoughts there?
I don't think that beers that taste like candy are ruining the industry any more than tiki drinks are ruining the cocktail industry.
Fair.
I think they both exist there, and I think for certain parts of the industry, the only thing that's keeping them afloat is beer that tastes like candy, and I'm fine with that. There's people who want that, and there are people who do it well, and they're getting by with that. Everybody's happy with it. Well, I don't have to drink it. I do enjoy getting into some of that stuff. I do have a beer for tonight that's debatable. It's a little bit more cocktaily than it is, candy. But I'm lured in by some of that stuff. I definitely look out for things that sound like desserts and whatnot occasionally. Now, I realize as I get older, I can't drink a ton of those because I feel it. Like those. Man, those sugary beers really worked me over something awful. Like they didn't used to even 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I love them, but I can't handle them as much. So I get what they're saying, but don't be a stick in the mud. Let people have their fun. Drink your good beers.
Drink what you like.
Support the people who make the kind of beer you like, and everything will work out just fine.
No one is forcing anybody to drink something they don't want to drink, and that's talking about the cocktails. As an example, I have spent a day under an umbrella on the beach drinking pina coladas and have an absolute fabulous time, other than getting really sunburned. But I've also had a really nice cigar with a Lagavulin and enjoyed that as well. So, sometimes maybe it calls for the fruity drink or what have you, or maybe I'm in the mood for that, maybe not. But enjoy it. Drink what you like, enjoy it. No one's going to force you to drink something you don't enjoy. And there's plenty of breweries out there still making the classic beers. So, all right, one more, Brian, Nate. Quality beer isn't affordable anymore. What do you think, Nate?
So quality is a subjective title, but I think overall, just based on how everything is less affordable in general, it's getting harder to find, I think, a steal or like a deal on beer. But even a 4-pack of a craft lager, like you were talking about earlier, with the Trillium Pilsner being $120 a case, that's insane. Because back when I was a buyer for a liquor store, we would get in these crazy tripping animal beers, and the case cost for those was $110. And that's not a lager or a Pilsner or some light, easier to make beer, I would think less costly. So the fact that, a Trillium Pilsner case is $120, I think, is real indicative of just how expensive everything truly is. And so, yeah, I would agree with that quality beer is, not as affordable anymore.
Brian, how about you?
I think that's very much. I think that is true. I mean, the cost of everything has gone up. The people aren't getting paid enough to keep up with it, and I've seen charts where beer seems to be outpacing the increase in other industries. I think our rates of increase in price, I believe I've seen, beats wine and spirits, which is why we're losing ground to those. And you see it throughout history. Anytime something goes up in price, you start losing some of the people that were into it. So I've remembered various things in the past, like in the cigar industry, where a new tax was enacted or something went up. You started seeing people disappear that would hang out. Yeah. And I think the reality is some people get priced out of the market. So we see downturns in craft beer. It could be because the people that are into it, I've been priced out. So I think to a certain extent, like quality beer. Yeah. I mean, there are options that are still quality. Sierra Nevada, I think, is still very affordable, that sort of thing. But I mean, the stuff that we really pay attention to, that the hot stuff, I think a lot of people can't be drinking that all the time. It maybe occasionally, but not enough to keep the really super premium area of the industry afloat. It just gotten too expensive, and it's not the fault of the breweries per se. I think it's everything. All the prices, I think they're eating some of the costs too, to try to keep it affordable for people as much as they can. So, yeah, I kind of agree. I do kind of agree with that.
Yeah. I think I'm with Nate's take on this one. The other one, no. This one, yes. I'm with Nate. Everything's too expensive, man. And, you go out and the price of a beer at the bottle shop is getting close to the price of a beer at a restaurant, So it's, if I go out, I don't remember the beer right now, but I was at a bottle shop and I picked a can up and it was like $9.95 for a single can. I'm like, no. I don't care what this is. I'm not paying. Now it was a 16-ounce can, but I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And years ago, when we were more into bottle sharing, 50/50 Eclipse was popular and very hard to get.
Yeah.
And they come in 22-ounce bottles, bombers, which you'd never see those anymore, hardly ever. But they were $40 to $50 for some of those.
Yeah, 40, 45. Yeah.
I remember grabbing a couple when I was in a state that had them, because of these are rare, these are delicious, this and that. And each time I drank them, I enjoyed them, but I picked one up here in Atlanta that I think I paid $35 for. It wasn't that great. And I know that I've had beers that cost less that were better. So that's another thing too. I look at, using pocket knives as an example. Brian and I are both into pocket knives, and there's a brand called Civivi that they're a mid-price knife. And I kind of use them as a benchmark that says, if your knife is not better than a Civivi and it's priced more than a Civivi, then it's a bad value, And so I look at beers like I mention these guys all the time because they're my local favorites, but Good Word Brewing, Halfway Crooks, we've got Wrecking Bar Monday Night, and all of these guys are making some great beers. And if you're marketing a beer that's twice as much as what these guys are charging, and these are smaller breweries, so they're not getting big breaks on ingredients and stuff, it's hard for me to buy into that. So chicken wings are too expensive. So you go out for beer and chicken wings, you got to take out a second mortgage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the wings have come down a little bit. I haven't been able to. The reporting stopped happening when the prices were less unreasonable. So I don't know where they're at right now. But I think
Not
they've
sure where
come
the
down
index is.
Yeah, I still think that other parts of the chicken, which what are they? The drumsticks are like comparable in terms of what you're getting and way cheaper. So for a while, I'd wind up getting those instead. So
it got to the point where a drumstick was cheaper than a wing. And I mean, it's just ridiculous because, the piece of chicken you're getting, the restaurant Wingstop, for a while they did, and they may still do it, but they went to thighs. Like they're using thighs because it's like you can get a whole chicken thigh cheaper than a stinking wing, So
yeah, just
the
go
crazy
with it then,
chicken wing index. Well, Brian, moving along, here's one for you. I saw this news, so I didn't even read the full article. It was actually, I think it was in Ukrainian or
I think so, yeah.
whatever over there. But a topic that's near and dear to your heart, Brian, was some Ukrainian beer.
Oh yes, you mean the tomato beer style that apparently is a thing over there? That's yeah. I saw it. I went to the page. I did need to use Google Translate on it. It was all Cyrillic characters, so I don't know if it's Ukrainian, I suppose, but apparently they've tried to submit a outline of what this tomato beer is to the BJCP or work with them on defining what it would be. And based on reading through the article, it can range in color from light to deep red, which makes sense. Tomatoes can be added to the beer at any stage in the production and in any form, from fresh tomatoes to juice. And the main characteristic of the beer is it should remain in balance. Tomato should be a big feature of it. So yeast and fermentation temperatures don't matter so much. It could be a lager, it could be an ale. Spices can be used as long as they harmoniously complement the tomato and don't stand out. So it's a big enough thing in the Ukraine to make tomato beer that they want an official style for it. Yeah,
that's interesting. That's something I think a lot of keys, not just with a tomato beer, but probably a lot of them, is that balance being the key. If it's unless you're making those candy beers we were talking about earlier, if you have balance in there, because that sweetness from a tomato, if it's balanced in a beer, I mean, heck, I drink my beers with tomato juice, guys. I love micheladas, so I'm not the best one to to really give opinion on this, but I see where you could make a lighter, more balanced, where it was more an accent flavor than a dominant one, and I'd be good for it. And here, cheers to beers. They've got a great suggestion: tomato smoothie sours.
Tomato smoothie sour, yes.
And I think the tomato smoothie sour needs to happen there. We need to get that.
I would try it. Yeah,
need to get that out there right now. Yeah.
Gross.
So I wonder if any of those Ukrainian tomato beers make it over here. If that's something that's more just in the tap rooms and that.
I'd never. You would think with something like that, and the times that when we were homebrewing it and Googling to find out, what you could do with tomatoes in a beer, and I never saw any kind of reference to it. So I don't think any of it makes it over here. And with the whole war situation over there, I'm guessing it's difficult for
Not
things
right now.
like that to make it out of there. So I would love to try some of those though, and I think that they would enjoy my tomato basil saison because it was balanced. I think they would appreciate it. Finally, I found my people. I think
that's what I knew you had to see that. I knew you would appreciate the peoples of Ukraine there. Well, guys, let's get into our beers of the week. As always, we want to thank our friends of the Nest for sponsoring this segment of the show. Craft Beer Barbecue. You know what? They got wings. They've got great wings. We've talked about it before. And as we mentioned, as these temperatures cool down, whether I like it or not, they do have a gorgeous patio, which does make it a little easier for me to deal with the colder temperatures there. I can go out. They've got a big stone fireplace there that's really pretty. And they've got heaters to kind of work along with the fireplace. So if you're out, unless it's brutally cold, you're going to be comfy on their patio, even if it's pretty brisk out there. So get you a beer, get you a plate of barbecue, hang out there. You're going to have a good time. The Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia. Thanks again for sponsoring Beer Guys. our beers for this week, we have, Brian, you did a little pre-gaming with a little Anchor steam beer. And we're going to talk a little more about Anchor here in just a minute. From Round Trip Brewing, Brian had an Instant Crush, which is a Kolsch. And from Highwire Brewing, the one Brian was talking about a little bit earlier, a rye whiskey barrel-aged Manhattan Ale, which is a barley wine style. Nate, pre-gaming beer there. There's all kinds of pre-gaming going on. Another local beer here. Lime Creek, the Real Dill, which was a dill pickle sour. How was that, Nate? Wait, you don't like pickles?
But, when it comes to being in a beer, apparently I do, because it was pretty good. Yeah.
All right. You need to try pickles again then. Maybe your palate has expanded.
We'll see.
Is it a texture?
You can appreciate the culinary greatness of a pickle now.
Just grind it up and put in a beer and I'm happy.
Yeah,
maybe we'll make a smoothie, pickle smoothie sours, tomato smoothie sours.
I think Cheers to Beer's beer reviews.
He's on to something, man. He's on to something. Little collaborative work here from Creature Comforts and Heater Allen. We have Heater Action, which is a Dortmunder lager, and from Birds Fly South, who we talked about earlier with the saisons. R.I.P. to Birds Fly South. But Nate has got their Nights Like These dry Irish stout, what is not a saison.
Nope.
So I'm currently sipping one. I wanted to get this before it got, before it sat in my fridge too long, but I have Pilsen Liberation from Three Taverns Brewing, hoppy Pilsner that we talked about earlier this year, that they did what was the name of the brewery? Their experimental brewery over there?
Pivovar Proud or
Pivovar Proud, something like that. But,
something to that effect, yeah.
Little collaborative effort there that was good. And guys, if I get to it, I'm not a huge fan of these, but it was gifted to us and I want to try it. I have got a little Noda Brewing Gorgeous that I may crack into a pumpkin beer just to see what they've got going there. So those are our beers of the week. Good stuff. Brian, what is the latest on Anchor Brewing?
Okay, so yes, Sapporo has officially put the Anchor Brewing property on the market as of Thursday of last week. They are asking $40 million for the 2.17 acre property, which includes 2 buildings. The Anchor brand is also for sale, but it's being sold separately from the building to maximize the value for the Anchor Brewing creditors who are going to be getting all the proceeds for this. Reportedly, there are interested parties in the building. Some of them even want to maintain the site as a brewery, but not all of them. The area is a popular one for artificial intelligence startups, so it's possible that Anchor could become an AI startup at some point in time. So that'll be interesting.
Okay.
The Anchor Brewing Union still says they are serious about purchasing the brewery. They are working with investors. So far, we know that they've raised more than $107,000 via GoFundMe. That's just what we know about. There may be additional funding involved that we're not seeing. But they say they're having real trouble, making a bid because Sapporo is withholding financial information that they need to do so. So I think Sapporo is not officially doing anything illegal, but it does sound like they are going out of their way to not be helpful at all. I think they do not want to sell to the union for whatever reason.
What could possibly be the reason where they would want to? And all of this has been so weird. Like some of the artifacts and business records going to the Smithsonian, then they're selling off the land. We know that land in that area is just ridiculous. So $40 million for a 2-acre plot, crazy. But yeah, it really seems like they have not been. All right, to back up a little bit. If I was a big brewery owner, if I was a big company and I bought a brewery and it wasn't doing it for me, and the employees were to come and say, hey, we want to try and buy this, I would be all for it. Unless you have some malice towards the brand, you're like, look, guys, this isn't financially beneficial for us, but yeah, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can work out. But it seems like Sapporo's actually the total opposite of that. They're just, like you said, maybe not illegal, but they seem to be roadblocking.
Yeah, they seem to be heck bent. I'm going to say that for the
heck bent. Yes.
Heck bent on completely dissolving it. And I've wondered, is this kind of a, it failed and so they want to destroy it because it failed? Is this kind of, does it tie into that? Or did the did the management and the union butt heads so much that they said, no matter what, we're not selling it to these people because we hate them? I don't know. I feel like there's something more happening here, because it seems like you've got an interested party. It's an American institution. People will get behind them to buy this if you work with them at all. And they seem very determined not to do that. And they've gone out of their way donating a lot of the intellectual property and documents already. So those are out there. So that's not something that'll be under the house anymore. So yeah, it's weird. This is very much an intentional thing. Something's going on there, and there's bad blood. That's all I can figure. There's some bad blood there, and I don't know.
Crazy. Well, Brian, our next story, and I see Nate put it in the show title there. I'm opposed to sharing this, and I'll say that's because I think it's ridiculous and dangerous. But Brian, I see you've got it here. So an absolute moron on TikTok is trying to complete we're going to call it a challenge. But what in the heck is going on in TikTok this week?
Yeah, it's a good point. You may have about sharing this drawing attention to really dumb behavior, but I didn't even think of that. It was just, this is so out there, I have to talk about it.
I got you. Makes sense, yeah.
So this dude on TikTok is attempting to drink 2,000 pints in 200 days. And for people that are good at math, that means 10 pints every day without a break for 200 days. Apparently, he was inspired by somebody else who announced that they were going to drink 1,000 pints in a year. He figured he could double it, and then he dropped it to just 200 days to make it more interesting. 2,000, 200. The numbers look nicer.
Quick math, yeah.
So, and like many other ill-advised things people do on TikTok to get the attention from strangers, it's totally working. He's gotten like 80,000 followers and millions of views on his videos on this. I'm not on TikTok. I am not one of the people contributing to that.
Fair, yeah.
If it sounds like a lot of beer, you're right, but these are British pints, so presumably he'll be drinking beers in between 4 and 5% ABVs, but it's going to be expensive, so he's going to have a little pain for this. He's already spent £6,000 or about $7,300 on beer, and he estimates it'll go up to $9,700 by the time he's done. But TikTok is now his full-time job because he's doing this thing, apparently. I don't know how that works, but it is. And he's also getting paid by somebody to drink his 2,000th pint in front of a live audience. So when he's done, he says he's going to go to the doctor and have a scan and take a few weeks off of drinking. He doesn't seem too worried about it because he's got no weird pains, and he's only 25 years old. So I figure he'll probably get away with it with only a mild case of alcoholism. So
just a tiny tinge of cirrhosis.
Just a tiny bit of cirrhosis of the liver.
Just a little bit of cirrhosis.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, this is just... What's that, Nate?
Said maybe some yellow fingernails.
Yeah. Who knows, man? Who knows? But, there's things where guys have done like the 40 days, like through Lent or fasting and all that. But a lot of times those guys like, hey, I talked to the doctor. I've got this planned out. I'm checking on this. We're talking an average of 10 pints a day. And I did see something where he was like at day 55 or something. And he'd only averaged like 5.7 a day up to that point, because I think he was a ways in before he changed it to the 2,000. Because when I saw, he's like, hey, I'm at 5.7, so I'm on track, all as well. But my dude's lost a quarter of his time and he's under the average, which means I don't know how far he is into it now, but he's going to have to kick back a 12-pack a day. It kind of sounds like. So.
Oh, jeez. And they're pints. I think he can drink some at home. He could get the Imperial pint things, but I guess they don't come in 12 packs, right? I don't think.
No, I think he's been going to the pub from what I saw in the article. Like he's going to the pub and maybe live streaming. I think he did drink a couple because someone was saying like, hey, those are, I think they said something like 440 milliliter cans, which isn't a pint. I don't have my converter on me right now, but I think we did some math on this. I forget, but anyhow, whatever it was, it sounded like it didn't add up to a full pint. So they were saying he was slacking there, but this is just crazy. This is just that's a 12-pack a day, And for those who enjoy math, that's 84 pints a week that he's looking to. What you got, Nate?
So, I just did the conversion. 1 U.S. liquid pint equals 473 milliliters.
Okay, so slightly shy then, huh? Slightly shy then.
You were talking 84 pints in a week. Imagine going basically tailgating every day for 200 days straight.
Yeah, right.
It's awful.
Crazy.
Why would you do this? But
it's
leave it up to the cavalier nature of a dude in his mid-20s and doing it for internet clout.
Yeah, I can't imagine when I was, let me just say I'm glad we didn't have TikTok and all that when I was 25. That's all I'll say, because I could be in the same thing. Stephen Pete's got a comment here. Before I forget, I want to throw this up, guys. Stephen Pete reminded me of something. Stephen said, thanks for posting the petition supporting the Foam Act. So we have a challenge here in Georgia, like many states do, where our breweries face some restrictive laws on what they can do, especially in relation to distribution and franchise rights. And the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, Joseph Cortez, the executive director, the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and a lot of Georgia's brewers are fighting to bring attention to these challenges and get a better beer bill up. SB 163, that's Georgia Senate Bill 163, will give the full details. I posted a link to a petition on some of our social media earlier this week. And one of the biggest comments I had was, where's the bill? Where's the bill? I've added that. If you go to our Instagram and you click on our profile, the top link is going to be a direct link to the bill. The next one is to sign the petition. So if you don't feel comfortable signing a petition without seeing exactly what you're supporting, the bill is there so you can check it out. But basically, they're fighting to get some better laws here. Y'all, we've seen it everywhere, not just in Georgia, but breweries are closing their doors. It's a challenging time for beer. There's been so much competition and growth out there. The term bubble bust has been thrown around. I don't think we're in a bubble bust. We're in, as years ago when we talked to a Bruce Watson from the Brewers Association, he said we're looking at a market correction. Anytime you have a period of huge growth like that, there's some correction when things level off, when the hype and the fades a little bit, or when you just get I don't want to use the word saturated, maybe in some areas that's right, but there's a lot of beer in the market now. So there's going to be some changes to that. And having challenging laws don't make those challenges any easier for brewers. And some good people have closed their doors simply because of challenges that they face due to the restrictions of law. So check that out, y'all. We've shouted it out for New Jersey and other states. We want to bring attention to this stuff. And we care about everybody. But, of course, when it's our backyard, we want to see some good things happen. So please do check out our social media, see what's going there. If you believe in it, and we believe you will believe in it, then we'd love to get your signature on the petition to raise awareness for this cause. Brian, I think it's that time, man. I think we have some sponsors that we really would love to tell some folks about. What you got for us today?
Yeah, I've got a little something here. One problem I always have when I'm browsing the new beer section at the local beer store is, do I want that new beer enough to buy the 4-pack or the 6-pack or even the single? They come at a premium, like you were talking about earlier. I've seen cans myself for $8+ like they're 12 ounce or 16-ounce cans, but they're really expensive. It's like, man, I wish I knew if I'd liked it enough to justify that price. So, and sometimes I do spring for it. And when I do, sometimes I regret it. Sometimes the IPAs are not as new as the shelf might imply, or sometimes I get a beer that's, has Jägermeister in it, which actually happened, and it doesn't turn out to be a great beer. So
is this about our sponsor?
Yes, I'm getting to that.
You getting there? Okay.
I am totally getting there. And that's a really good point, because I don't have that problem at Truck and Tap. And let me tell you why. The last time I dropped by the Alpharetta location, I was trying to decide between several IPAs I really wanted to drink. I didn't want to get both because I still had things I needed to do that day. So what did I do? I asked it for a taster of each, and they were happy to comply. So I was able to drink the IPA I enjoyed the most, not just roll the dice and settle for whatever I got. And in some cases, when you do it, it's a very stark contrast. You're like, I definitely want that one and definitely not that one. So if I were at the Alpharetta location right now, I might get tasters of the Steady Hand Isolation IPA, which features Strata and Cashmere hops. That sounds really good. And I would probably also get a taster of Other Half's popular broccoli IPA, which I also know is very good, and see which one spoke to me now. Of course, you can try this at any Truck and Tap location, Woodstock, Alpharetta, Duluth, or Lawrenceville. And as always, the full tap list for each location is available on their website, truckandtap.com. So drop by and taste some beers at Truck and Tap.
Brian, have they ever ran you off for getting too many quote unquote samples?
They haven't yet.
No, like, Brian, look, we love you, man. We really do. But that's your 30-second sample. That's, you know, you got to make a choice.
I try not to do more than 2 at a time because at a certain point I start to feel bad. I've never been told no, but after 2, maybe 3, you really need to pick a beer and just buy it. So, you know, and I always do. Yeah.
But it's nice it'll hook you up because there's not a lot of places. If you wonder how something tastes, you're like, can I get a little sample? You know what? I think I want the filet mignon, but before, could you little slice me off a little bite there?
A little piece for me to taste?
Let's see how that is. Yeah. Good stuff, man. Well, Brian, sadly, the Braves are out. The Braves are done. I had a buddy from Houston ask me, how are people in Atlanta with the Braves loss? And I said, you know what? I'm really not hearing a lot about it. I think that people were so slapped by how quick it went down that we just didn't want to talk about it. You know, just move on with our lives. Fortunately, even though the Braves season at Truist Park is done, Terrapin Brewery Atlanta is still there for you. And if you want to not talk about the Braves losing, but you need a beer to drown your sorrows, they're there for you, man. They've got you covered. There's a lot of great taps there. There's always something new on tap that they've got for you. As the weather starts to cool down, start looking out for those darker beers. They've got a lot of great ones there that we can't wait to see on, like the Wake and Bake Coffee Stout. We always look forward to seeing that coming around. And I'm sure that they'll have some other one-offs that we don't even know about yet, Brian. There's beers that we're going to drink that we don't even know exist yet. And you can be that way too. You can go to the Terrapin Brewery Atlanta, see what they've got on tap there, enjoy something nice, drown your sorrows, and maybe you need a rack of ribs to drown your sorrows as well. Well, good luck, because Fox Brothers is right there with him. So Terrapin Brewery Atlanta, check them out. Tell them that the beer guys sent you. Have a good time, and we'll wait till next year to see what the Braves can do. Brian, this is something you and I have talked about before, that we've dabbled, or we've dabbled in drinking or looked around for. You don't see a lot of it yet, but raw ale. And I think we talked about it very briefly on a recent show, but it sounds like that it's having a little bit of a moment in New Zealand right now.
Yeah, this kind of surprised me. I want to say that I think I want to give a shout out to Stan Hieronymus for pointing this out, because I would have completely missed it. There's a blog in New Zealand called The Pursuit of Hoppiness, and they're talking about real ale is big down there, like a lot bigger than you would expect. It's
real ale or raw ale?
Sorry, raw ale. I see raw ale. I see a lot of British folk in my timeline talking about real ale, which they mean cask ale.
Okay,
raw ale, raw ale. Yes. To illustrate this, a beer festival that's happening when this show will air, called Funk on the Water in Wellington, will have 2 raw ales, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's at least one more than I've ever seen at a beer festival. And I think the time I saw a raw ale at the beer festival, it wasn't officially on. I think it was a little bit of a bootleg situation. But and one of these raw ales was brewed without electricity or gas, if you can believe it. And a big part of what appears to be driving the appeal of these raw ales is the sustainability angle. So brewing beers without electricity or gas, I think that appeals to people that are very environmentally conscious. And they're taking a lot of inspiration for these beers from Lars Marius Garshol, and his work on documenting the historical Scandinavian and Baltic brewing techniques. Now, if you've seen Quake yeast or the Norwegian farmhouse ales out there, he's the one that has been reviving a lot of the interest in this and has been tracking down the yeast that have used in this. But there's a lot of raw ales that are brewed in these areas. And so when I say raw ale, I'm really meaning that wort that is not boiled. It's pasteurized, though. They typically, at least in New Zealand, they will hold the beer at a temperature of 176 degrees, which is enough to kill off the bacteria, but it never goes to a boil. And so for other people, when they talk about raw ale, they can mean partial boiling or even really short boils. And even Lars himself says up to like 30 minutes might be considered a raw ale, but that seems kind of generous. Generally speaking, we're talking about enough heat to kill the bugs, the bacteria, and not have a hot break or isomerization of the hops to any significant amount. What's even more interesting, I thought, was there is a brewery called Cell Division in New Zealand that makes a bunch of Berliners, and they have for a while, and all of them are raw ales. They've never made a Berliner that wasn't a raw ale. So that's how big of a deal it is down there. So what do you think about this? Have you guys had any raw ales?
I don't know if I've actually tried. I know I've seen some places where they've been there, but I don't know if I've actually tried one, because I think the brewery that you're talking about, Brian, that did one, I don't think I got out there when that was on.
Correct.
So to back up a little bit on what you said, because the raw ale seems like kind of a misnomer with what you're saying, but the key there is you don't boil long enough to isomerize the alpha acids in the hops or to get a hop break. Correct.
Yeah.
And for those not familiar with brewing terminology, a hop break is just you boil the beer until proteins, basically, I think it's proteins and polyphenols, they coagulate, and actually, you'll get a foam and chunky stuff on the top of the beer. That's your hop break. So the purpose with this, so I'm assuming they're going to have a higher protein content in the beer.
Correct.
If you're not getting that hop break in there. So interesting. Okay, but no, I'm not sure if I've ever had a raw ale.
I had one, and I don't remember the style. I want to say it was something like a dark lager. It was very interesting. I'd like to try a few more. I want to say I had a second one, but off the top of my head, I can't remember it. But yeah, it's so the guy that makes the Berliner says that this raw ale technique works well for sours because they can rely a lot on the acid contents or the pH level to kind of stabilize the beer. He says he does acknowledge that there are drawbacks for if you want to make a clean beer, if you're looking for something hoppy or whatever. Like a raw ale is probably not the best way to go. You're not going to isomerize the alpha acids from the hops. You're not going to get a lot of that stuff, and you're going to have all those additional proteins. So if you're looking for a clean beer, but apparently for like wild, funky, whatever beers, all that additional protein just adds a great element to it. So I would really like to try a raw Berliner. That sounds really cool to me. So maybe it'll catch on here now that this is out in the wild. I don't know.
We'll have to look around. Well, Brian, if necessary, I mean, you could catch a flight and go somewhere that's got more raw ales. And, depending on where you fly, a lot of airports in the U.S. have affordable beer, but some don't, right?
Yes. This is a fun list that I found this week, and I love lists like this. I don't know how much they're actually useful to anybody, but something to keep in mind when you're flying is the price of an average beer, and I don't think it's even a pint. I think we're just talking bottles for the most part, sometimes draft, but usually not 16 ounces. It can range from one airport to the next in the U.S. by as much as $8. So where do you think, and if you guys haven't already read it, you might already know, where do you think is the most expensive pour of beer, and how much do you figure it is?
So I cheated, but that would have been my guess. So
yeah.
I'll wait and see if Nate hasn't looked yet. So
maybe he hasn't looked.
I haven't looked. I was going to say, I assume somewhere in California. As far as coming up with a price, I don't know, maybe $10, $11 a pint.
So you're close on the price. The most expensive average beer is at New York's LaGuardia Airport. It's $12.33 a beer. They don't specify a size. I don't know if they're equating bottles and draft. I think a lot of places do like little draft pulls, and they're probably not much more than 12 ounces anyway. But yeah, $12.33 for a beer. Where do you think is the cheapest airport for a beer in the U.S.?
These are tough questions, Brian.
Yep.
These are tough questions. I'm trying to think. I looked at the answer, but I was actually trying to erase that from my mind and see what would I have said if I had to guess, because So yeah, I'm not able to do that. I'm not really sure where I would have guessed, but I'm gonna spoil. I'm giving this one away, Brian. It's Portland. Portland,
Yes.
Oregon has the
Yeah.
cheapest beer at $4.33, which really that's a good price, airport or not,
Yes.
for a beer. So, but yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Portland's rocking some affordable beer at their airport. So, I believe I've been in Orlando at the Cigar City, and I think it was pretty typical. I don't think it was ridiculously priced. I don't see Atlanta mentioned. And Brian, we've got a lot. I figured we may have some affordable beer here. Do you remember seeing old ATL anywhere on the list?
So in the list that I saw on, it was AmericanCraftBeer.com is where I got it. It's a synopsis of this. They had the cheapest list and they had the most expensive. I skipped over the cheapest, but I looked through it. We weren't in the cheapest. We're somewhere in the middle range. One of the more interesting things I noticed is, so Portland, Oregon is $4.33 a beer, typically $8 less than LaGuardia, and they're cheaper than Salt Lake City, which is another place I would have thought, oh, that's probably going to be a cheap place. I think if it were up to me to guess, I probably would have said someplace like Orlando is being the cheapest place, somewhere in the South, but not Atlanta, like somewhere like that maybe is being the cheapest. But I do like that. Portland, I'm happy to see my former home place being representing well with beer. The weird thing, the most interesting thing is the number 7 on the most expensive list is Seattle, and they're a full like $4.30 more expensive on average per beer. That's Seattle. I've done the drive. They're 3 hours apart driving. I'm like, how on earth is it so much more expensive in Seattle? Different state, but so the number 2 most expensive is the Detroit Metro Airport, $9.36 a beer. Newark, New Jersey, $9.31 a beer. Las Vegas, which doesn't surprise me at all, $8.86 a beer. And in the 5th spot, JFK, another New York one, that's $8.80 a beer. And I'm going to add this in just because all of those beat Honolulu at $8.69. So Hawaii, which you would imagine just an island and getting beer there, they make the right beer, obviously. But Honolulu is in 6th place at $8.69. So, and of course Seattle after that. But man, it's expensive to drink beer at an airport in New York or New Jersey, or just anytime you're traveling. It's like live event beer prices.
And I think you also have to look. I think you also have to look at the locations. Like, in all honesty, $8.80 for a beer in San Francisco, or $8.50. I don't know that that's that ridiculous. You're probably not paying a whole lot less out at the bars in San Francisco, to be honest with you.
Probably right. That's actually probably right.
I could be talking out the other end of my head here, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is Texas is pretty high up there. 9 and 10 are both Texas airports, and they're in the 830 range, 832, 830. So yeah, it's really it's surprising. And I wonder what causes this to be, because I'm surprised, and I love that Portland, Oregon's the cheapest. It makes me want to visit again, but why? What is it about there that allows that to be possible, and all of these other places to be so expensive? I don't know. Taxes,
we all need to
fees,
fly to Portland via SLC, and
yes,
we'll be good to go there. So.
Double down on cheap beers. Yeah.
Yep. Nate, did you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, because I was going to say that, Honolulu being on the island, I'm really shocked that is cheaper by several dollars than New York.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Alaska. I don't see them mentioned. So it looks like they're not in the top 10 most expensive there. So that's another one. Usually, anytime you see a commercial for like McDonald's or Burger King, it'd be like prices vary in Alaska and Hawaii, something along those lines. Like, it's going to be higher here. But
Nashville's number 6 in the cheap list. I did pull up the website. Tampa Bay, number 9 on the cheap list.
There you go.
I do not see Alaska in there, so they must be mid-range somewhere. And
I think I said Orlando, but I think I flew through Tampa. I think I meant to say Tampa, talking about drinking at the airport. That's Tampa, not Orlando, right? Cigar City's Tampa, not Orlando,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's Tampa.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
that
right.
would have been my guess. That would have been a guess there. So Mo Mike Nate has things to say. He does
Absolutely.
indeed. Mo Mike, you got anything else to say right now?
For the moment, no, I'm covered.
You covered? You good? Brian, do you have anything else to say right now?
I am drinking the rye whiskey barrel aged Manhattan Ale, and it's quite nice.
Tell us about it.
It's very enjoyable.
Give us a 50-second beer review.
It's got a lot of barrel character. It's got some nice cherry notes to it. It's really enjoyable. Yeah, I've been kind of sipping it while I've been reading this, so I've been focusing on it too much. But I like this, and I think this was not an inexpensive 16-ounce can, but I don't regret getting it. So this is Highwire did this. Yes, that's correct. So
is it from the fridge, or did you let it get to the proper temperature there?
That is part of the problem. It is still a little on the cool side. It is starting to open up. I'm starting to get some of the richer malt character out of it, and the barrel is not as dominating, but there's definitely a little bit of there's that. It's a pleasant barrel. It's not super astringent, but it's a nice presence of barrel in this, and a little bit of, I think, a little bit of like a cherry sweetness in there. So this is nice. This is nice.
Nice.
I like this.
Nice. Good stuff. Y'all, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week. We're going to have a really cool guest with the next week. We will have John and Isaac from Spyglass Brewing Company on the show. So please do go to our socials or go to the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild website. Check out the Foam Act, Senate Bill 163. We'd love to have your signature on the petition there to raise awareness for these better beer laws. And you know what? If you're having some struggles in your state, drop us an email. We'll be glad to share the info so others know about it. We'll help to spread the word. But we hope that you all have an absolutely fantastic week. We thank you for tuning in. Cheers.